So as we think about how to build paddocks, for instance, if we want to graze this pasture here, but we want to split it into multiple paddocks for grazing, then we can access our water either through here or the ramp on the front of the pond. So either the water trough or the ramp. We have a lane built here to allow the livestock to be able to come into this ramp, and there's also a lane at the bottom of this levee that allows the livestock to come into this water point. So as I build this paddock, I can work off of either of these two lanes to access water points. So I can string temporary poly wire here for my first paddock. I always start closest to my source of water and graze out from that, allowing them to walk back across for the next even several days if we need to the same water source across the area that they previously grazed. If these paddocks were grazed under higher stock density, the degree of trample and soiling or manure and urine application to the ground here, the cattle have no desire to regraze this during that time period as long as they have fresh forages in front of them every day. So we can split this into multiple temporary paddocks using single strand poly wire and tread in post, and then from these water lanes I can dip in and incorporate my shade. So the cattle from each paddock can come in, access water, access shade, come back out to the paddocks for grazing. Now there's another way that we can do this as well. If we do not want them coming back across previously grazed paddocks, if we feel like maybe we didn't have high enough stock densities to discourage them from grazing these previously grazed paddocks, then I can simply build me another lane here close to this permanent fence and feed from the water and shade lane directly into the paddock lane. So as I go into the first paddock and graze that, the rest of these paddocks are closed off in this lane. As I switch them to the next paddock, they will come into this lane, move into the second paddock. I keep this cross fence, single strand polywire cross fence up, and then close this paddock off in the lane. And we just keep repeating that process as we move through in this pattern. So it makes it very, very easy. Now we continue our grazing movement by moving the cattle down to, again, the paddock closest to the water in the next pasture that we're going to graze. And we simply repeat that exact same process. Now you'll see here that we have shading all along the fence line here and a grove of trees in the corner of this pasture. So depending on the time of the day, we rarely need shade in the morning. It's predominantly in the afternoon. So if this were to the west, I would have plenty of shade in the afternoon along this entire fence line. However, if this were facing the east, I would want to build a lane here to incorporate my shade and then move the cattle, just as we did here, move them from paddock to paddock to paddock, with this lane being open to the shade and a lane here being guiding the cattle to our water source. So that allows us to be able to easily move cattle and again, always access all three of the critical elements that we need. Then as we finish this paddock, we can then move into the next. And again, I can decide I could actually split this paddock here and work off of two different water points during the time that I'm in this paddock. So I could work off my ramp in the pond while I'm grazing this portion of the paddock, and in grazing this, I can use more of a wagon wheel type pattern in coming out or radiating out from that water source in this lane and feed always into that lane for water, and then again lane them to shade either here or lane them to the shade in this corner, again using temporary polywire. Then as I move from this to this, I can actually switch water sources. And I can start my first paddock again closest to this water source, and then radiate out from that to moving from paddock to paddock to paddock, working off that water source. And again, we have from that water source the same lane out into our shade. So again, in every paddock, they've got their forage, they've got their water, they have their shade.